Greetings and welcome to the Industrial Lens Podcast. Here we examine cutting-edge insider knowledge on industrial equipment, strategy, and trends so that you can thrive and stay ahead of any challenges, seen or unseen. Now, let's get industrial.
Hello, and welcome to the inaugural Industrial Lens Podcast. My name is Eric Hassan with Caster Connection, and I am sitting here with the one, only, numero uno caster nerd, Joseph Leyden.
Hello. Thank you, Eric.
Thanks for attending, Joe. So we're here to talk about all things going on, kind of trends in the manufacturing world. Could be product, it could be a trend, it could be a specific problem going on in the industry. But today, we have the luxury of having Dr. Gary Allread with The Ohio State University. Gary is the program director of the Spinal Research Institute. It is the consulting and training branch of The Ohio State University's SRI. Gary has received his PhD from OSU back in 2000, and he is also a certified professional ergonomist. He does serve on the board and current president of the Applied Ergonomics Society, actively collaborates with the annual Applied Ergonomics Conference, and has also been a member of the Human Factors and Ergonomics Society since 1987. Gary, great to have you on. Appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Great, my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this.
Us as well. If you don't mind, can you just give your own little introduction about yourself and, maybe a little bit about the SRI, and we'll get on and rolling.
I stumbled into the field of ergonomics back probably as a teenager, even though I didn't really know what it was at the time, but fell into a program at the undergraduate level when I was at Wright State University. They had a human factors program at the undergraduate level, which was very rare at the time. And so it really appealed to me in terms of understanding how to integrate work around people's capabilities and limitations. And so that led eventually to my graduate work at Ohio State, and then my position now working with the Spine Research Institute, which is one of the primary ergonomics facilities we have at Ohio State University. And what we do there really is try to better understand what are causes of musculoskeletal disorders, soft tissue injuries, and we focus really on trying to understand how to prevent those initial injuries. But we also know that people get re-injured after an initial soft tissue injury. And so understanding those injury mechanisms as well is another one of our focuses. And we work with industry in addition to doing basic research on those topics. And that it involves not only developing models to understand how stress gets distributed through the body, but then applying that to help companies or organizations address their ergonomics issues, often in more quantitative, validated means.
Very good. Gary, could you kind of expand on just some of the industries that you've worked with?
Wow. It's all across the board. We've had a number of different applied research projects over the years where we've collaborated with companies in manufacturing, whether that's traditional types of products or more specific like automotive industry. We've been working food processing and printing and distribution and warehousing. And a lot of those contacts that we've had through some of our research really has led to us also providing ergonomics technical assistance for those companies as well. And for me personally, it's been very rewarding as I've been able to get an understanding just of how physical work impacts employees across many different types of environments, and has really given us an understanding about how to more feasibly implement ergonomics. And so what I really like about the field of ergonomics is that these principles of understanding injury mechanisms can be applied in so many ways, not only across different work settings and industries, but in anyone's personal life as well, with products and equipment, how we do work, whether that's on the clock being paid for as part of our job, or even off the job.
You've been in a variety of industries, as you just mentioned, Gary. Do you see, whether it's, let's say you're in a food manufacturing plant or an automotive plant or, whatever variety of facility, do you see the same ergonomic challenges in a food processing plant as you would see in an automotive assembly plant? And if so, what are they? And then if not, how are they different?
That's a great question. I certainly have seen a lot of similarities. And so, for example, given what you were talking about, if we talk about strict material handling, just focus on and how an item is transferred from point A to point B. That could be packages of frozen meat product, or it could be a door that's going to be put on a vehicle. And so, those both can be heavy, how much they weigh and how they are being held and transferred, even though the products are quite different, can be similar in terms of how the body reacts to that type of lifting and handling. And so the the locations of items, how they are moved within a facility, are quite comparable, or can be. But then there are different aspects of that handling that might vary. For example, the rate at which that work is done could vary quite a bit, whether or not employees are rotating among different jobs that could impact the amount of loading cumulatively that would get sustained by the employees. So in those kind of situations, I do see lots of commonalities, and that's really good because we often see that there are solutions that work in one industry that can be translated very effectively into other industries. Granted, I have been in organizations or companies where the work is completely unique. One project involved maintenance people who worked on wind turbines that were 20 stories up in the air. And so that environment was considerably different than other organizations and companies and their work. And so there are those one-off, so to speak, but the principles still apply. The body is still the body, and how it responds to stress is comparable in many ways.
Sure. Thanks for that, Gary. Through some of the conversations that we've had over the years, a lot of what the conversations that you guys look at is more based on reaction, and then a lot of what you guys are looking at is prevention. Could you talk a little bit about some advancements that the SRI has made over the years in regards to preventing potential disorders?
Yeah, I think that one example of that is thinking about the fact that knowledge is power and information. And so one of the big contributions I think the Spine Research Institute and our ergonomics group really at Ohio State has contributed to is developing better models of understanding how stress gets transferred through the body and what impact is on that. So in other words, employees can do all sorts of different repetitive activities that put stress on their bodies up to a point that doesn't cause long-term damage, because the body's an amazing structure and can heal very effectively. But yeah, at what point is that too much stress that is going to cause wear and tear? And so some of the models that we've developed, especially spine-related models in our lab, have allowed us to understand more realistic work environments and those tasks that are required and how that impacts the body. For example, we've been able to understand how loads on the back differ among different parts of the lumbar spine. And we've also been able to, with some of these advanced models, understand how different types of work activities affect the stress on the back in different ways. One example is with traditional lifting as opposed to pushing and pulling. Earlier models of understanding the back really only were good at understanding how compression puts stress on the back and what can be done safely. And when you look at compression on the back, that's a downward force on the spine. There really isn't very much when people push and pull objects. And so the thought for a long time was that, pushing and pulling wasn't problematic, but we were still finding that there were a lot of injuries. And so some of our more advanced, more recent spine models have shown that it's really shearing forces, back and forth, front to side forces on the spine that occur when people push and pull loads. And the back can't tolerate those loads nearly like they can in compression. And so we're getting a much better appreciation for the impact that push-pull activities, for example, have on the spine that are considerably different from traditional lifting.
Sure, and much more cumulative than like a one-time impact. If I'm saying that correctly, there's just as this is something, a potential injury could be building over time as opposed to just a one-off, sprain and strain injury.
And so traditional safety professionals, want to deal with and eliminate acute type injuries, one-time incidents like a slip and fall or a laceration or something like that, where they don't want any of that kind of interaction to occur with their employees because it's going to cause injury. In ergonomics, it's different. We can allow people to pick up things that are heavy or move repetitively, but up to a point. And that's where I think, our lab and other ergonomics labs have contributed quite a bit to the ergonomics discipline by better and more accurately determining where those limits are, so that we can provide more justifiable guidelines and suggested limits to companies and to clients on what people can do under those conditions and still stay safe.
Absolutely.
Sure. Because the pushing and pulling, as everyone out there might know, we deal in casters. We deal with this kind of thing every day. Gary, you and your team have probably been involved in 1, 2, 3, or many when it comes to, specific studies in regards to pushing and pulling. And, you did mention multiple industries also. We come to find out when it comes to, and I'm using my fingers, quote unquote, standards when it comes to pushing and pulling, we tend to see across industries, they're not the same. They tend to differ, and it can even differ between plant to plant within the same company. So if you could elaborate or, give us some insight on some of the studies you may have been involved in and, what results you found out, in your lab. And, do you see, standardization across industries, or do you see, different quote unquote standards from food processing to heavy industrial manufacturing to automotive?
Well, when you say standards, I think of, reference materials or some guidelines that are used by those industries to determine what is safe and what could be pushed and pulled safely by employees. And so there's been a progression, I believe, in terms of the way in which the impact of pushing and pulling affects the body, in terms of our knowledge and our ability to accurately determine what those safe levels are. And we've progressed from more subjective perceptions of whether push or pull activities are safe to more recently some of the studies that we've researched and published really relate to objective measures of when a specific type of push-pull activity is going to cause a small fracture in the back that could lead to longer-term cumulative trauma if individuals are exposed to those over a period of time. And so one thing that I've learned quite a bit from these push-pull studies that we've done is that I kind of think of, an object that's being pushed or pulled, a cart or container or gaylord or whatever it is, kind of as a black box. And the effort that it takes to push or pull that black box is dictated by how much weight is on it and the friction between the casters and the floor. And so that's really an important consideration. But then the other part of it is how is that object, how is that black box being moved by an employee? Are they pushing it? Are they pulling it? Are they standing up while they're pushing it? Are they bent forward? Are they pulling it with one hand or pushing it with two hands? And so how that force then is distributed through the body is really where we have focused on determining what the impact is with all those other conditions or methods that a push-pull activity can be conducted. And so we've been able to then look at a lot of the primary different conditions that individuals push and pull based upon our observations and collaborations with companies, so that we've been able to develop guidelines that allow us to input many of those different factors to determine cumulatively what is safe and what might be risky when it comes to pushing and pulling.
Very good. I do believe you and SRI worked with OSHA to recently developed an online tool to assist with, what those safe limits are when it comes to, I think it's overall height, pushing or pulling, and a couple of different factors that you can easily input online and then get either a safe or risky assessment. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. That is a great tool. We actually collaborated with the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation on that. And so they provided some funding for us to develop these guidelines that were based upon the more detailed spine model that we've developed over the last several decades. And so what that study involved was surveying industry. And so we went out to lots of different companies across many industrial sectors to really understand how do employees push and pull items. And again, it could be in food processing, it could be in automotive. We went to a lot of different types of facilities to really look at the postures people use, the forces, the ways in which materials are rolled or moved through facilities. And then that helped us recreate those in our lab setting and develop limits on at what point does that activity cause fractures in the spine, in the discs in the spine. And as you were saying, that really is dependent upon not only the force that has to be applied by what's on the cart or in the container, but how far is the person bent over? Because that's going to change their spine posture, and it's going to impact how those stresses go through the body. It's also is able to factor in, is someone pushing that, say with two hands, or are they pulling it with one hand? You can do those activities safely, but the limits as to what is safe change depending upon that posture. And so all of that has been put into a very easy to use, free to anyone web tool that can be found on the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Compensation website, or if you do a simple Google search looking at push-pull guidelines, it should come up. And we find lots of different industries, clients that we have, collaborators use this tool quite a bit, and we're so happy to hear that.
Yeah, I mean it's a great tool. We send it out to our clients as well. And to elaborate upon that, you're across many sectors, and it's mostly in the manufacturing. Currently, Gary, in your opinion, from an ergonomics standpoint, what are the biggest, 2-3 biggest challenges that, face manufacturing companies when it comes to, assembly lines and being safe and properly, assessing that risk? Because there's a massive labor shortage out there. It's not easy to find people. When you try and help our clients keep their people as safe as possible, from a pushing and pulling a material handling cart. But your experience delves into way beyond just material handling carts. So, what do you think are a couple of the biggest challenges that are currently facing manufacturers during this COVID time?
Oh, or any time.
Yeah, anytime.
Anytime.
Yeah.
Don't need to throw that COVID variable in there if you don't have to.
Yeah. Well, I think that ergonomics has always had some challenges especially in manufacturing and industrial settings. And part of that comes from just the nature of ergonomics related injury, cumulative trauma injuries, which develop over a period of time. And the reason that ergonomics is often suspect is that I think we often, as humans, have a mindset that, there's something that occurs and you see a reaction to that, a response to that. And that's very clear when someone slips and falls or they break a bone or something like that. And you can relate cause and effect. Cause and effect is not as clear in ergonomics, in that the buildup over time may not be so prominent, or individuals might not be so aware of that. And then when they do reach that tipping point, it may have occurred doing something that may not have contributed to all of that wear and tear in the first place. And so that often leads to some suspicion among management. Another way of looking at that is that, you often can't see a strain and sprain like you can a laceration or something, a foreign body in the eye or something like that. So that's always been a challenge in ergonomics. And how we try to address that is providing more understanding, information, training, and knowledge among companies so they have a better feel for that. And we can do that simply by looking at injury records, because we know that these cumulative trauma, strain, sprain type injuries in many industries are more prevalent and can be more costly than several acute type injuries. So I think that's one of the ergo challenges that we have. I also am seeing that another challenge is better understanding how the shoulder is impacted by industrial work. We still have a lot that we want to learn about the back, but we also have already learned a lot and have some really good validated tools that help us determine what is safe or risky when it comes to material handling. when it comes to upper extremity work, especially work that involves the shoulders, we have a long way to go in the ergonomics community because number one, the shoulder is very complex and can move in lots of different ways. And it's really hard for us to measure that and the stresses and put that in a form that would allow a practitioner to say, we have these kind of work conditions that involve use of the arms and shoulders. Is that safe or not? That's a big challenge for us.
Sure, that makes sense. Gary, could you talk a little bit about some of the technology that you guys have been able to use over the years to track or assess the potential, strain over time? Some of the stuff that you've shared with us is, interesting, and I think that it might be interesting to the folks listening to this podcast.
Yeah, well, thanks for that question. I think one of the primary pieces of technology that the Spine Research Institute's known for is the development of a device called the Lumbar Motion Monitor, or LMM, we call it for short. And this was essentially the first wearable sensor that was out in industry. We were using this back when I was a youngish graduate student in the early 1990s. And what this tool does is it fits on the back very easily. And individuals who do material handling, lifting, doing those kind of industrial tasks can wear this device when they're actually doing their job. And we get data about how far they're moving, how fast they're moving, and which direction they're moving. And so we get a lot of really good quantitative information. We combine that information with an assessment tool that we have also validated that gives us an idea of at what point or what is the configuration of a job that we believe more injuries are going to occur to the back of employees doing that work than would be preferable, more than what would be desired by the company. Or at what level can you design that job so that the job is not risky and likely to cause injury. Sure. And one of the biggest things about that is that we are able to input the impact of movement and motion. And we know that with more movement on the joints and the body, we have more stress and more cause for injury. And so the predictive ability of that tool is much higher than any other back assessment tool that's available for practitioners to use currently.
Yeah, that was one of the things that was very interesting to, in the conversations we've had over the years, and really understanding specific job duties, and like you said, looking at the thresholds and really, mitigating that risk to, ultimately prevent injury, which is great for the individual, and industry as well.
And I also think that it goes back to your previous question is, one of the challenges we have in ergonomics is communicating risk with what management often focuses in on, is return on investment, dollars and cents. Sure. And so one of the benefits, I think, of using this objective tool like the lumbar motion monitor and its risk model is that we can say, this is essentially the number of injuries you would expect on this job. And if you do X, Y, and Z changes, you can make this safe so that people don't get hurt. This is how much you've paid out in injuries on this job. And you could eliminate that if you make these changes, and we can document the impact of that benefit objectively with a tool like the lumbar motion monitor.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you do need to look at it from a return standpoint, but, there's also, impact within the organization when you're helping guys on the floor, which is really the most important piece. But dollars and cents drives a lot. So
one of the, if you don't mind me elaborating on something,
for sure.
The nice thing about this particular tool was that, we can collect data and we actually get results right on the spot. And so I was using this in one company that was a paper processing facility where employees were loading sheets of cardboard into a machine, and we collected some data and found it was pretty high risk. And as we were collecting some of that information, the forklift driver brought over another pallet of product that had to be also then loaded into the machine, and he put it off to the side. And I asked, the individuals working there, I'm like, where do you put this cardboard that has to be loaded? And they're like, well, wherever it fits. We usually put it in this one location that we had studied. And me understanding how the spine works, I said, well, what if we put it over in this other spot, kind of to the side of the machine? Is that going to be in the way? And they're like, no, that's fine. So we collected some more data, having the individual lift and load the cardboard from that location. And just doing that one change, we saw the risk drop about 5 to 7%. And so it was really clear, a really clear method to really show how often some simple changes in a work environment can have a big impact on the health and safety of employees.
And that was really just a process change. It didn't require any additional, equipment or anything like that. And you were able to see that in live time. That's
absolutely
pretty cool.
This is a what I would consider applied ergonomics. And, Gary, you are currently the president of the Applied Ergonomics Society. Can you just explain to our audience who may or may not be aware, kind of, just define what applied ergonomics really is, and then, what the goal of the Applied Ergonomics Society is?
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm starting my duties as the president of the Applied Ergonomics Society, and really what the goal of this society is to bring together practitioners who are implementing ergonomics improvements and studying the impact of work on people in manufacturing industrial environments. And we felt that was really important because it's a professional organization that really taps numbers of individuals that need to make process improvements to help keep people safe and healthy. So it's very different from a research-based professional organization that in that we focus more on what can directly be provided to our members that they can use to evaluate and improve the work settings and the processes of their employees. And really what we've been seeing, I think, in the whole ergonomics discipline is that there are ergonomics practitioners who are full-time ergonomists. That's their job. But we're seeing more and more that a lot of different individuals in a company, engineers, HR individuals, maintenance people, they also need ergonomics information, even though they don't consider themselves ergonomists. And one thing that the Applied Ergonomics Society does is try to tailor that information to all groups of people who may need some ergonomics information at some point in time, even though they don't consider themselves ergonomists. And so that's one of the goals really of our Applied Ergonomics Society, is to provide information and knowledge in forms that can be useful and used by a wide range of individuals. And, and these could be, as I said, engineers, healthcare professionals, but it also could be production team members who need some information or guidance or ideas for solutions to make their jobs better. And they may not have the technical education to do it, but they certainly understand their jobs and might need a little additional information to help them along with their efforts. And that's one of the goals that we have with the society, is continuing to reach out to those individuals, understand what their needs are, and provide them with information and knowledge and education to further their ability to implement ergonomics into their workplaces.
Yeah, that's great. And with that, there is an annual conference associated with the Applied Ergonomics Society, and that's the Applied Ergonomics Conference, which is usually around the March timeframe. And we've been involved in that for a couple of years from a Caster Connection standpoint. But what I find fascinating about the conference is the Ergo Cup, which is includes maintenance folks, engineers, disciplines from across an organization coming together to find a solution across multiple industries. Gary, could you just go over what the Ergo Cup is, the different divisions within the Ergo Cup, because it is meant to provide solutions across industry just to show it could be the simplest innovation when it comes to material handling or lifting something or making something better. A lot of continuous improvement is associated with the Ergo Cup. So if you could expand upon that, I think a lot of the listeners out there probably do not know what the Ergo Cup is and might be highly interested in getting involved in something like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I love the Ergo Cup at the Applied Ergonomics Conference. It's probably where I learned the most from any conference I've gone to, and it's been a relatively unique feature of professional conferences. And essentially, what the Ergo Cup competition is it's teams of individuals who have implemented an ergonomics solution and they want to show it off. And so we typically at the conference have anywhere from 40 to 70 booths that are Ergo Cup entries. And the teams of employees from companies that are selected to showcase their ergonomics improvements have a booth where they set up and demonstrate what their improvement is. And they are required to go through a process that explains what the problem was, how they went about improving it from an ergonomics perspective, what they got from that, and what the longer term benefit has been over the last few years. And so people who come to the conference can play around with those solutions. The Ergo teams are usually so excited and proud of the work that they did and the benefit that comes from that challenge, from that issue. And they also have demonstrated that it's a feasible solution, that it's not some pie in the sky idea. It's something that they actually put into place, people use. And there's been a few cases where the solution has been removed temporarily from the workplace so it could be demonstrated at Applied Ergo, and the people back at the facility were not real happy about it because they liked it so much. And then so there are different categories of Ergo Cup categories. There are those that are based upon just teams of production workers who collectively worked on and implemented that change. There are some that are led by an ergonomist or an engineer. There are also some that are focused more on training or systems type improvements related to ergonomics. And the Ergo Cup competition has been going on for some 20 years. And there are a lot of larger companies, particularly, who have their own internal Ergo Cup entries of 20 to 30 individual projects that only the top one or two of those then make it to the actual Ergo Cup at the conference. And so it's really a big rewards award ceremony when the winners of the different categories of Ergo Cups are announced at the end of the conference.
Very cool. How would an organization look into getting involved in the Ergo Cup?
Yeah, there's a lot of information available on the Applied Ergonomics Conference website.
Okay.
There are examples. There are webinars and videos that individuals can watch to understand how to get a project entered. And the last thing I want to mention too, that I didn't do earlier, was that what's really cool, and it goes back to your earlier question, is that often we'll see solutions that a fragrance company, for example, put into place that's so creative and unique. And so many times I've heard people say, hey, I work in automotive manufacturing or a paper mill, but I can still use that solution for, task 1 or task 2 or job 3 that I have here. And so I think that's why the Ergo Cup has become so popular, because attendees to the conference have so many practical takeaways that come from looking at the Ergo Cup entries.
Yeah, that could cross many industries, even if they don't smell as nice, as right. So,
what is one of the most memorable solutions that you've witnessed over the years from the Ergo Cup?
There have been several. One that comes to mind was I don't remember what kind of company it was, but they had employees that had to scoop all of this gel material out of 55-gallon drums with a scoop. And you can imagine how long it would take to do that, how repetitive it would be, how much bending you'd have to do and reaching to scoop everything out of this drum. And it was gelatinous enough that it wouldn't pour out. And so one of the people who did that job had just had Thanksgiving dinner where they had a can of cranberry sauce, that gel that few people like to eat at Thanksgiving. And the one way that he would get that cranberry sauce out was by releasing a little pressure along the side of the can with a knife, and the whole tube of cranberry sauce would dump out. So he used that same logic with the big tub or drum of this material, where they were able to tip it up with a device, stick a rod down the side to release the tension, and all of that material then came out. So it was an incredibly simple, incredibly cheap improvement that benefited a lot of employees, reduced risk, and was based upon translating knowledge from Thanksgiving to the workplace.
Yeah, you can always look around for, simple solutions in everyday life that could apply to, industry for certain, even if it is that over ocean spray cranberry sauce.
Yeah.
Very cool.
When it comes to ergonomic challenges in the workplace, and we, face it on a daily basis. Sometimes, you could see an Ergo Cup champ or a application or something that you want to initiate within the facility, or a new guideline or a new standard that you found. What is, in your opinion, Gary, what's some of the challenges it takes to get those new standards or an initiative instituted within a facility? Because sometimes it may sound easy, right? But sometimes it's not always that easy to get done.
To implement ergonomics into a facility, is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, I found your BWC website, and this is great, and I want a couple different departments, if I'm the safety professional, to use that. But sometimes there's not always buy-in, right? Like, any advice on helping to get a new standard or guideline instituted that may reduce risk across the corporation?
Well, I think that there's a number of things. And what I've learned over the years is that, we have we might have research that we can apply to particular type of work activities, like the push-pull guidelines. And that's all well and good. But then we have the other component of how well is the employee going to use that or find a benefit to that. And that's where I think the facility or corporate climate of encouraging participation among various levels of workers is so critical. And I often see that that's not the case, that leadership engineers think they have the answers, and they may not fully understand the nuances of a job that the production workers who are the experts of the job really understand. And so I think that collaborative approach really is one of the most important things that is going to help an ergonomics initiative like using these guidelines, to make that successful. And so in trying to, bridge that and, get more of the usage of a tool like that is going to take that buy-in. And so demonstrating what that benefit is, certainly by talking with individuals, maybe someone who's the biggest naysayer, if you can get them on board, demonstrate, how a workplace improvement is going to benefit them. And if everyone else sees that, Tom, who is the, big naysayer, is actually enjoying this, using it, other people will come around as well. So there's a lot of strategies that you can use to get that buy-in. I think part of it too is by having tools that the information is directly can be directly understood by management. That really sends a powerful message as well. And that's one thing that the push-pull guidelines do, that with that free online tool, is that you can put in some conditions and it's going to come up green, yellow, or red. And if it's red or yellow, you can play around with making some changes to see if that changes a red activity or condition to yellow or to green. And those type of messages and information can also be very powerful to help the whole company understand the benefit that could come from those type of assessments and available tools.
Yeah, we would agree.
For sure.
Simplistic and easy to understand from the maintenance guy, from the associates on the floor, all the way up to management. It is critical for institution, of new standards and guidelines for sure.
Yeah. Thanks, Gary. We've discussed a lot about some of the successes that the Spine Research Institute has had, and a lot of the the history you've had in ergonomics. Could you talk a little bit about what direction you see the ergonomics industry going, and explain to us a little bit more about CDMI?
Yeah, well, just like any type of industry or research endeavor, we're seeing growth in an expansion of our understanding of how individuals develop cumulative trauma injuries. And so I think there's a number of things that I see on the horizon that will help in our understanding of what causes these type of injuries. One of those is I think a better appreciation and more integration of what I think of as a more holistic view of work. And so a lot of the emphasis among practitioners is understanding what are the physical demands of a job. Mm-hmm. But that's only one part of it based upon what we know a work environment and how that impacts people doing work. We also know that the environment in which people are doing work has an impact as well, and research is very clear on that. That is, how do people respond to the workplace, like psychosocial factors, like how well do you get along with your coworkers or your supervisor? How much control do you have over setting up your work in a way that is preferable for you? In addition to the physical demands of the job, we're seeing that those psychosocial factors have a big impact and interact with the physical nature of it. And we know that people are different who do that work, and some have more capability or limitations than others. And so I think future development in the ergonomics field is integrating what we know about those factors together, so that we get a much better appreciation for how much stress a particular workplace puts on individuals, and more options really in terms of how we could come up with safer and healthier workplaces. And so that I think is one of the big developments we'll see in the field of ergonomics. The other really, I think, is the integration of new technology
Sure.
to that, like wearable sensors, exoskeletons. Those are big areas of activity right now. I think that there's some utility, obviously, for exoskeletons, but they have to be implemented correctly and for the right environment. So I think that there's a lot of careful analysis that's needed to use those appropriately. I think also, we all have smart technology with us right now with our phones or our watches that record so much information. And those types of technology are being used quite a bit in industry now. The thing that's lacking is an understanding of, when it comes to health and safety and reducing injuries, of all that information that's gathered, what's the important information?
Sure.
That really relates to, is this job stressful or not? And there's a lot of assumptions that are being made right now among people using this technology that's not really validated. And so that's where our research is starting to go, and where I think there's going to be a big push and a big emphasis on not only using this new technology, but using the right information from the data that comes from the collection of that technology. And that really relates, I think, to one of the really exciting programs that we have going on at the Spine Research Institute, is our involvement with a research consortium called CDMI, or the Center for Disruptive Musculoskeletal Innovations. I know that's a mouthful, but essentially these type of consortiums are being set up in many different kinds of research organizations, because federal funding for research has really been going down over the last couple of decades. And so what is apparently coming to be realized is that these collaborative partnerships between industry and academic universities and research institutions is really where we're seeing, I think, much more interesting and helpful research being conducted. And so how the CDMI works is that we have industry members who pay membership fees. Those industry members then collaborate and work with researchers at particular universities, like at Ohio State, and determine what are the needs that industry has. For example, there's been more need to understand various push-pull activities. There's been more of a need to understand how wearable technology can be used. And so the researchers who have funds from industry are really guided by what industry is telling them they need. So it's not researchers coming up with ideas of what they want to study and hoping that industry practitioners can benefit from it. It's really the industry folks, based upon what they need to better evaluate work, to understand how to make jobs safer. It's those requests that are then conducted by researchers and put in formats that can be directly useful for our industry members, and then eventually for the general public.
Yeah, that's great. Caster Connection has been involved with the CDMI and has done a couple studies, and it's fascinating to be a member. There's some great information that comes out from the CDMI. We've been a proud partner.
And the thing that I really like about these type of industry university partnerships is that it's a much smaller investment from any individual company, and they reap the benefit of all the collective research that is conducted under this particular center. And so our center, CDMI, really is is a collaboration with 2 other universities, and those universities look at healthcare treatments and improving the costs of injury, or reducing the cost of injuries when they do occur, and other topics and information that can be also useful and come with the price of membership from those who do become members. And so it's a small cost investment, but there's a huge amount of research collectively that any individual member then get. So it's a big bang for the buck.
Yeah, definitely
Absolutely.
agree, for sure. Well, Gary, it's been a great time talking to you. There's tons of avenues that we could go down. We didn't even get into, the ergonomics of working from home and a variety of other topics, but we'll save that for the next time. Much appreciated. Valuable information that you provided, today. Thank you so much for your time, Gary. It's always a pleasure. Joe.
Yeah. Thanks again for the time, Gary. Are there any websites or additional information that we could point people to if they want to gather some more information in regards to either the SRI or CDMI or anything like that?
The LMM tool.
I don't know if there's any more acronyms that you want to throw out there.
Yeah, there's a lot of those. Thank you. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate the opportunity to do this. I will tell you that our Spine Research Institute, the URL is spine.osu.edu. And what we've tried to do is present a lot of our research in summary form. And so if you go to our website and look at some of the research links, especially in the ergonomics part of our website, we have put a lot of the applied research studies, in layman's terms, and put it in what we hope is a format that can help whittle down that research to take-home messages that industries can use to, perhaps better understand or improve the working lives of their employees. In addition to research articles, if you're interested, you can read those fully on our website. And so there's a lot of information there as well. I also think that OSHA and NIOSH continue to put information on their websites that focus on worker health and injury reduction. And so those are valuable sources in addition to some I've already talked about.
Awesome. Well, Gary, we really appreciate the time and the work that you guys are doing. It's extremely impactful to a lot of different industries and working towards improving people's, health and safety and reducing risk. So we really appreciate the time spending with us today, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
I do as well. Thanks again.
Yep. Thanks, everyone, for listening to the Industrial Lens podcast. See you next time.